Welcome to a brief devotion in Psalm 39. One of the things that fascinates me more and more as I spend more time in the Psalms at the moment is the apparent connections between some of the Psalms. And I'm sure that the compiler of the Psalter, whoever that was, had some of these in mind. Now we have to be careful with them because there's an element of subjective understanding and interpretation. But let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean. There's some clear connections between Psalm 38 and Psalm 39. For example, in Psalm 38, he speaks about being mute, and he says the same thing again in Psalm 39. In Psalm 38, he speaks about waiting for the Lord. In verse 15, he says exactly the same in Psalm 39 and in verse 7. In Psalm 38, he speaks about God's hand upon him being like a plague in verse 11 that turns his friends away from him. He uses exactly the same Hebrew word, though differently translated in the ESV, in Psalm 39 and in verse 10, where he says, "Remove your stroke from me." So there are some verbal connections and similarities, but I think there's more to that, more than that. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Psalm 39 flows out of the experience of Psalm 38. In Psalm 38, David is suffering physically, mentally, socially from his sin and his guilt that he pleads with God to relieve him of. And he's desperately ill. And it's at times of being seriously ill that we often think more about our mortality and the brevity and frailty of our lives. Well, that's really the theme of much of Psalm 39. I found the first Psalm 39 difficult to really work out the progression of thought, but let me tell you what I've come up with. I think verses 1 to 3 are a sort of introduction to three prayers that he prays in the rest of the psalm. In verses 1 to 3, David resolves to remain silent before other people. He's going to keep his mouth shut. He's not going to tell people what's on his mind because he's afraid that they will twist it and misunderstand him, and therefore not only malign him, but more importantly, they'll malign God. So he resolves to keep his mouth shut. But the more he does that, the more difficult it gets. And so there comes a point, as it were, when the dam bursts. There's a fire burning within his bones. And the dam bursts, and he prays what I think are three prayers in the next three sections of this psalm. But he's not speaking to men, he's speaking to God. So verses 4 to 6, he prays to God, remind me, teach me to number my days effectively. A bit like Moses in Psalm 90. Remind me how brief my life is. Not remind me of how many days I have in the sense they are many. Remind me they are very few. Compared to the span of the world, I'm just a passing breath, a blink of an eye. And that's real wisdom, friends, isn't it? To keep reminding ourselves that we're here today and gone tomorrow. There's an old tradition, I don't know how reliable, that some of the Roman emperors used to employ somebody to follow them around and from time to time say to them, remember you're a man, remember you will die. Well, we need to keep that word of counsel in our own hearts and minds. The world would have us believe somehow that we're, if not immortal, we can endure for a very long time. And actually, we are but a breath. And we need to keep reminding ourselves. And the psalmist says that twice in this psalm. Remind me that I'm but a breath. So the first prayer is remind me. The second prayer, verses 7 to 11, is relieve me. There's a bit of a conundrum here. I'm so brief, so fragile, so passing. So why do you spend so much time disciplining me and chastening me? I'm so inconsequential. But of course the truth is, David and you and I are not inconsequential. The secret of this whole psalm really lies in verse 7. My hope is in you. That's the reason God takes so much time, so much care with us, to discipline us and chasten us and make us more like himself, because we are consequential. We're made in his image. We're not just the grass that is here today and tomorrow is thrown in the fire. We are creatures in the image of the living God. And so God spends time shaping us and nurturing us. And that involves discipline. And then his third prayer comes in verses 12 to 13, or particularly in verse 12. I call this, remember me. Don't turn your face away. Hold not your peace at my tears. Give ear to my cry. Listen to my cry, because I'm weak and I'm frail and I'm only around for a very short space of time. So hear my prayer. Listen to me and deliver me and answer these requests that I make to you. So a great prayer, three great prayers that remind us of our mortality, but also of how important we really are in the eyes of God. We are his children, created in his image for his purposes. The Lord bless you.